the private reserve strategy is near and dear to my heart for a number of different reasons that I'm going to share. But at Cal College, I kind of teed it up with a clip from The Godfather. And I thought that, that's a pretty intense movie. It's a real franchise in Hollywood, but the story behind the story of the making of The Godfather is what really resonated with me, because I think it's very analogous to the private reserve strategy. I talked about the fact that research will tell you that when you tell somebody something, they'll forget it. When you show somebody something, they'll remember it. But when you involve someone in something, they understand it. And I really think that is how we unlock the power of the private reserve system. And I'm going to share my screen and start with the private reserve strategy. So you should all see that on the screen.
Yep.
What I think is so important, and this gets back to tell, show, involve. Oftentimes, because the tools that we have at our fingertips through the Circle of Wealth software, it's really easy to fall into show and tell. And show and tell, by the way, makes us head and shoulders above most financial advisors. It's very powerful. And I think that a lot of us have had some success because we can show and tell a lot of these concepts. But we fall short of harnessing the real power of these tools if we don't go that extra step and involve our clients so that they understand. So first thing I'm going to say is, this is the first slide that comes up when you click on the private reserve strategy as the standalone module in your Circle of Wealth software. And in and of itself, as you just keep clicking, it tells the story, right? It shows them and takes them on a journey. Number one, the benefits are you have increased savings and lower financial stress. Okay, got it. The strategy combines a unique type of savings and a new approach to major purchases. And you see things moving on the screen, okay? And it talks about the key is to save in an account with access through collateralization. So in and of itself, it gives them some things to think about. But this better not be the first time that your clients have seen the tanks. And for most of us, it isn't. But I think because we live and breathe the personal economic model, because we speak tankology, it's very easy for us to forget that this is still very new to our clients. Even if you are engaged with somebody who you've walked them through the personal economic model, you've explained the tanks, which Star does such a marvelous job with, we take for granted that they remember everything that we've talked about previously. And I think oftentimes that's a mistake. Involving them means engaging them in a way that they're connecting real time when we're showing them these things. And so I think what leads up to the use of the private reserve strategy module is so important. And that's what we'll get into in the course in March. Because when we leave this screen and we go to the two key financial concepts, there is an opportunity to glaze over this. And you kind of say, hey, you finance everything you buy, you either pay interest or you give up the ability to earn interest. And then when you click on these calculators, that will take you into a much more involved discussion about financing everything you buy. And this particular module, okay, ends with a summary page, things to consider. Assuming you earn the same rate of interest that you would pay if you borrowed, the cost is the same. It's easy to show this screen, to read these words, but it's more challenging to involve the client in this discussion. Paying cash drains the tank and resets compounding. When's the last time you paid cash for something? Give me an example. Do you realize that that was now money that couldn't earn interest for you? You need to invoke involvement from the client so that they can begin to understand the point that you're really trying to make. If the money in your tank could earn more interest than it costs to borrow, what's the opportunity cost of draining the tank plus giving up the control? So often, and particularly until 2022, when interest rates got a whole lot higher, nobody believed they were giving anything up if they drained their cash tank. They just didn't view a true opportunity cost. It was difficult for us to quantify that for them because in their own mind, they had already decided, I'm not making anything on it, so what's the big deal? Maintaining control of your money may be worth paying higher interest. Boy, if we don't have stories to explain that, and we just gloss over that statement, they are not going to understand the power of that control. If it costs more to borrow than you can earn, perhaps you should consider other tank alternatives. So easy to say that and move on to paying cash as financing. It's self-financing. But providing people with those types of choices, giving them more blades in the Swiss Army knife from a financial perspective, it is incumbent upon us to spend the time and tell the stories and really bring these concepts to life. It's just because the show and tell portion of it gets us through it, plants a seed, but it doesn't bring it to life. It doesn't take root in their mind unless we can involve them in a better way. The other thing that we talk about a lot, and I happen to love Spender, Saver, Wealth Creator. I think it's one of the most powerful modules that we can take people through. But I also thought a long time ago, and this was in a previous release, I created this a long time ago and screenshotted it and saved it forever. Because it is not always intuitive for our clients to understand that savers and spenders always, always, always end up in the same place. It's hard for them to believe that because that is not how we've been conditioned. And when you literally lay these on top of each other and see that there is a dramatic difference between where the wealth creator ends up and where the saver and the spender end up, it's incumbent upon us to make sure that they see that clearly. Because they're not believing it. This is a deeply held belief. The saver believes they're doing it a better way. They truly do. They do not put themselves in the same category as the debtor. Smart people have habits that they don't even know why they're habits. So we have to literally interrupt them and wake them up because they're not even conscious of this. And so sometimes taking the time to make sure that they really get this and not assuming that just because we walk them through it, they got it, is really, really important. The account ideal benefits. This is, we could spend an entire meeting with a client just on these two slides, where we talk about, in a perfect world, if I had a magic wand and I could have a wish list of things that I was looking for, tax deferred growth. Do we ask them, where do you currently have tax deferred growth on your balance sheet? Do they really understand it? Do they know it? Can they tell you the answer to that? Let's take our time and make sure that they can. Let's involve them. Tax-free distribution. Do you have anything on your balance sheet right now that will allow you to take money out without paying taxes, that has no success penalties in the future? Competitive return. What does competitive mean to you? What do you think a competitive return is? This might be a spot where we actually leave this screen and go directly to market history. Because if you really take the time to educate clients on all the different market timeframes and all the different performance histories, what we can really teach them is that there's a lot of time, effort, energy, media attention spent to get between a 3 and an 8% rate of return over a 20 or 30-year period of time.
And Beth, on this note, that's a great teaching opportunity here. If you wanted to go there right on here, would you go to the pop-ups? How would you do that?
Well, if I were going to be having this meeting, I would have had another view available, right? So if we go up here to view, as an example, I can open another window right here. And so if I wanted to do this in advance, so I'm going to show you two ways. Because I don't want to interrupt where I am in this presentation, I would open another window, which is just bringing me to a new place. And I'm going to bring that over here. Hang on just a second. So this is what's happening. Are you seeing my new view?
So if you stop share, and when you reshare, share your entire screen and not just the window, that way you'll be able to pull things over.
Let me do that right now. Here we go.
So then show that.
So I just pulled it over to my other screen. So this one's already up.
Yep.
And then down below, I can either bring up another circle of wealth, but in this instance, I've brought this up and now I can go right here to my things, or I can type in market history. Well, if I can type, and it pops up right here, and here we are. Okay.
And so, and also everybody understand, Beth is in the desktop version of the software. If you're doing it online, you can just open another tab in your browser.
There you go.
And go in there. So that's one way.
And so down here on the bottom, you can see I've got 2 circle of wealth, and I can toggle back and forth. I can go there. I can go here.
And then going back to the first one you had there, Beth, up on the top, if everybody sees up at the menu up at the top, there's that thing called pop-ups.
Right. And market history is right here.
That'd be the
Super
second one. So if she clicks on that, then that is like its own little window. She won't lose her place in the presentation, and she could teach kind of in that piece. So that's the two.
Those are the two easy ways to do it. If you want to have it up before, you want to pop up. This pop-up menu is awesome. Look at all these things: personal economic model, time value of money, all kinds of things like that. Income taxes use a lot, market history. Such a great tool.
Yep, that was excellent. Thanks, Beth.
So now high contributions. Well, how do you decide? And this is, again, where we're involving, where we're asking questions and engaging the client, as opposed to just showing them and telling them what's on the screen. How much do you think a high contribution would be? How is it that you decided on what you're currently putting in your retirement accounts? Is it because of the match that they're offering? Is that the incentive? Is that how did you decide? Do you know how much money you should be saving on a monthly or annual basis, so that on an after-tax and inflation-adjusted basis, your money lasts as long as you do? It's one of the 4 questions, right? Are we using that as we walk through this in a way that involves the client? A deductible contribution. That's one of the reasons people love to put money into 401ks, IRAs, 403bs, TSPs. Collateral opportunities. Again, the reason that private reserve strategy can't be too early in the process is because we've got to make sure that they understand some of these important concepts. Do you really know what I mean when I say collateral opportunity? What comes to mind when I bring that up? What collateral opportunities do you have on your balance sheet right now? Safe money. What do we mean by safe? Well, we usually, mean that you can't lose any money. Are there no loss provisions where you are parking your safe money now? It's in a money market account. Okay. Can you ever lose money in a money market account? Why? How is that different from? How is a savings account different from? Do you understand why we talk about the yellow and the green tank and what the difference is between the two? Not only a collateral opportunity, but how about a guaranteed loan option so that you don't have to be qualifying and going through this long, lengthy application process and wonder if you're going to be able to collateralize. Unstructured loan payments. I think this is something people underestimate and do not talk about. And I get it. We do this all day, every day. Our clients, some of these concepts, this is the first time they've ever heard about it. They do not understand or appreciate the power of unstructured loan payments. I had a very young client. She's just delightful. She's a bright 26-year-old, crushing it, working in corporate America, making a good living. She started a policy 2 years ago. We went through these things. And 2 years ago, I didn't understand how to involve people as well as I do today. Long story short, she finds herself in a little cash flow bind. And I reminded her of the money that she's accumulated in her private reserve. And I reminded her of the unstructured loan payments. Her words back to me were, I remembered that this was a really good idea, but I didn't really understand how good it was. That's on me. That's not on her. We are responsible for them understanding the power of these concepts, and the unstructured loan payment is a huge part of that. The liquidity, the use, the control, the additional benefits. Oftentimes, we don't get into that here, but these are, again, areas where we can involve the client a little bit more in the discussion in our effort to help them understand. Now, while many accounts will work as a private reserve, there are some that work better than others. What a great transition to, let's talk about what you have in your situation today that we could consider for the private reserve. Do you have money in a savings account? You're going to know this from your intake. How do we involve them and help them understand how a money market account might be a private reserve? Well, hey, you can put as much money in as you want to. It's highlighted. Collateral opportunities. Yeah, most people, most financial institutions, if you've got cash, they're happy to collateralize those cash reserves. It's safe. You're not going to lose money and you've got liquidity, use, and control. So out of the 12 things we're looking for, you get 5. But the ones that you don't get are the ones that don't make this attractive. You're not making a lot of money. You are paying taxes when you earn interest. Those taxes are not deferred. So you're going to pay success penalties along the way. When we talk about a CD, real estate, we do not want to hurry through this because we want them to understand, holy cow, the most common collateralized asset in American culture is the home, is real estate. And of all the things we're looking for, there's only 2 benefits. And so when we have the opportunity to get to permanent life insurance, we need to just pause and let them really see this. Because they don't want to believe it. Everything they've heard about permanent insurance is that it's bad. And so this is how we know we're in the belief changing business. They have to really be able to begin to see this and to understand it. And so when we get to the slide where we say permanent insurance as a private reserve is the preferred vehicle, again, we have to take advantage of the show and tell that's available here. Interest-only loan. 99 out of 100 people are not going to actually understand what that really means. Really, really, really means. And this is a great place before you even click again to ask them, do you really know what an interest-only loan means? Tell me the last time you bought a car and you financed it. Oh, do you have a car right now that you're making payments on? It was a 5-year. What's your monthly payment? Okay, got it. So you borrowed X, you're paying this much, and in 60 months, it'll be paid off, right? Well, what if you had borrowed that X and you only had to make interest-only payments? How much would that monthly payment be? Do the math. Help them understand the difference between the kind of loan that they're familiar with and that they have, and how that compares from a cash flow perspective to an interest-only payment. Yes, it's going to have to be paid off at some point. Now, how it's paid off is also an area for us to talk about. Do we have to do it monthly? Do we have to do it annually? Do we have to do it in our lifetime? There is so much here that allows us to drive home the value proposition. Now, I want to talk about why I think the private reserve strategy is the MVP in our all-star lineup of modules. And this is because of a client of mine. Her name, Jamie Anderson. Jamie, fantastic. She served our country for over 20 years. She was in the Navy. And then she took those wicked leadership skills that she learned in the military to corporate America, where she was crushing it. Back in 2016, and I really want you to understand this, I'd gone to my second Cal College, and I had been through the mentor program. So I was not at the stage where I understood how to involve people so that they would understand. I was barely at the stage where I could do show and tell. I just didn't have enough experience. I didn't have enough practice. So I think it's important to understand from a timing perspective, I was getting used to using the tools. Now, Jamie was very successful in corporate America. She was the divorced mother of 4 adult children, Christian, Jessica, Sean, and Jacob. And she was just crushing it. She was introduced to me by another client of mine, Patty. So I knew immediately we would hit it off. So Patty introduces us in June. We have a complimentary consultation to decide if we're going to work together in July. Jamie says yes. And in August, we have our first actual planning session. Now, at this point, I was doing agendas all the time. I'm going to answer the ARC questions. I was affiliated with a group that had an advisor resource center and did some planning. I wanted to make sure we went through allocation mix. I wanted to see if we could talk about retirement ready or not. This is the stage at which Beth Walker was still trying to find the money and make sure I was keeping track of where we were going. Okay. Now you see what I wrote in red, stopped out at PRS, account characteristics, savings and money market. These are notes to myself. I had gotten into the private reserve strategy, hindsight being 2020, too early in the process, but I did it. And that's where our time ran out and we had to schedule another meeting. Okay. But you can see by my notes, I'm looking for opportunities. And in my meeting in September, I've already identified the things we're going to talk about, the desirable characteristics in the green tank. I'm going to go over an illustration. I'm going to find the money, refinancing the home, She's got $100,000 in savings. We talked about that being a lazy asset. Okay. So yeah, I'm finding the money and I'm trying to figure all this out. In the meantime, she's getting promoted and she's moving. Okay. So I've shown her private reserve strategy in August. We've touched base again in September. And then in early 2017, I come back again to talk with private reserve strategy. And I did show and tell. I did not involve. I can guarantee that. And I did show and tell well enough that she agreed. She's like, yeah, this kind of sounds interesting. I get that taxes are going to be a problem for me in the future. I get that $100,000 in a savings account making 0.5% isn't doing a lot for me. Yeah, let's entertain this. I agree. Let's do an application, do a paramed. And obviously we were going to do a rollover of an IRA. So she's agreeing to this in the early first quarter of 2017. That's where it got really interesting. You know, somebody that was in the military, somebody that's successful in corporate America, she moved around a lot and she had a very colorful health history that I didn't understand until we got into the application process. So I had to summarize all of this for the underwriter. She was the victim of a car accident. State Farm wasn't going to make it simple for her to claim that some of her pain was related to the car accident. They took the position that this was unrelated. Her attorney brought in a different expert. So long story short, we had some work to do. And even in May of 2017, okay, I've shown her private reserve twice. We've applied, we're in underwriting, and the underwriter said, well, wait a minute, is she complying? Does she still have pain? How's she doing with all of this? So we get the doctor to write a letter and say, yeah, she's a great patient. She's followed all of her advice. She's doing well. So in June of 2017, I do private reserve the third time. I want to save all of you this kind of pain because it doesn't have to be this difficult, but I was new. I didn't understand how to use all this. I didn't understand the power of the tools at my fingertips. And now I'm showing her a design. Hey, we're going to do a premium deposit fund. Why don't you take some of that $100,000, put it on deposit, and let's have you put this in place. Let's put that lazy money to work for all the reasons. And we went through the ideal account characteristics again and benefits. And she said, yep, this totally resonates with me. Let's do it. Okay, great. So that is June of 2017, issue the policy. Awesome. Get it in place. Everything's great. She's busy. She's moved. She's promoted. Fantastic. So I come back about January of 2018. I haven't talked to her for a little while. It's time to catch up. Said, hey, Jamie, how you doing? How's the new house? How's the new job? How's the new life? She says, Beth, I'm really glad you called. I've got some news. I was recently diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Optimistic that we caught it early, that the treatment plan is going to be good, that I'm going to beat this thing. Okay. Now, unexpected outcome, right? Didn't see that one coming. And I'll be the first to tell you that when I was presenting this to her, you got to remember my background was yellow tank. I came into this industry and was in it for 15 years before I found Circle of Wealth. So in all the discussions that I had with her, I spent all my time dealing with this. I really did, because I felt compelled to overcome the negative numbers in the early years of the policy. And she understood it. I used the analogy of the 747. Hey, you got to pick up some speed on that long runway before you can really take off. And that explanation worked, and she bought into it, and that was fine. But I can tell you that at no point in 2017 did I ever talk about this stuff. Never brought it up. Well, in June of 2017, the conversation that I had with Jamie was very different. It was from her hospital room. And she was so choked up because the treatment plan wasn't going to work. They didn't catch it early. She handed the phone to her mother. And her mom and I had a discussion about powers of attorney. Did I have a good inventory of assets? Did I know where everything was? On July 28th of 2017, Jamie passed away from pancreatic cancer. And I never understood until that moment what a big deal this was. It certainly was for Christian and for Jessica and for Sean and for Jacob. Never spent time helping her understand that during the process. Because at the time, I'm not sure I really understood the power of the strategy. So when I think about the private reserve strategy, I think of how incredibly important it is as an alternative, as a safe money bucket, as a green take strategy. But I've learned that show and tell isn't enough. That you have to involve people. Because honestly, if you do the private reserve strategy with 10 clients and all you do is go through each of those slides, which are fantastic, they are all going to remember that it has to do with permanent life insurance. They will all remember it because we did show and tell. But they are not going to understand it in a way that changes their life unless we involve them at a deeper level in the conversation. And I am so committed to making sure that all of us in this community share our best practices, talk about ways we can involve people, and use each of those slides and where they take us to get into other tools in the process. We have all this stuff at our fingertips to bring this to life for people in a way that is life-changing. We are in the belief-changing business. And so I'm just so excited because not only will we have an opportunity to take our time, we're going to have every Wednesday in March to be able to take our time and really unpack each of the tools that are available to us in private reserve, and also share those ways that we can involve our clients and our prospects in a way that moves them toward action, that changes their beliefs, and really helps them understand why the private reserve strategy is absolutely the best thing that we can do to provide balance in their personal economic model. Why permanent insurance is the ideal tool for the private reserve strategy.